I'm Noah. I'm 32 years old, and while I was trying to build a life for myself halfway across the world, my own brother sold my inheritance out from under me. Before I tell you how a single, overlooked detail on a legal document brought his entire perfect life crashing down, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's good to know you're out there. The call came on a Tuesday. In Berlin, it was just after 3 p.m., and the afternoon light was slanting through the big glass windows of the architecture firm where I worked. It was the kind of quiet, focused afternoon I loved. I was sketching a blueprint, completely lost in the lines and angles, when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number from the States. I almost ignored it. It was probably a spam call, but something made me pick it up. Noah. The voice was older, raspy but clear. Yes, this is he. Noah, this is Arthur Harrison. I was your grandmother Eleanor's attorney. We spoke briefly after the funeral. A cold feeling, like ice water trickling down my spine, started to spread through my chest. Lawyers don't call out of the blue with good news. Mr. Harrison, of course. Is everything all right? There was a pause, and I could hear the rustle of papers on his end. Son, there's no easy way to say this. I'm handling the final probate filings for your grandmother's estate, and I've just been notified. The condo, Eleanor's condo, has been sold. The pen slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the desk. My colleague in the next cubicle glanced over. I turned away, facing the window, my reflection a pale, confused ghost against the German sky. Sold? What do you mean, sold? That's not possible. She left it to me. It was in her will. I know, Mr. Harrison said, his voice calm, steady. It was the kind of voice you wanted in a crisis. I'm looking at a copy of the deed of sale right now. It was filed last week. Signed by your brother, Leo, acting as executor. Leo? The name felt like ash in my mouth. My perfect older brother. The golden boy. The one who could do no wrong. But he can't do that. He knows she left it to me. He seems to believe he had the authority. Another rustle of paper. I've only seen the digital copy so far, but I have to tell you, son, there's something not quite right here. The notary seal, for one. But we'll get to that. He paused again, and I could almost hear the gears turning in his sharp old mind. Then he let out a dry little chuckle, a sound completely at odds with the dread coiling in my stomach. You know, Noah, he said, and his voice held a new edge, a glint of something I couldn't quite place. Whoever forged this document, they were clever, but not clever enough. He let out a soft sigh. What a fool, what a fool. That single sentence hung in the air long after we'd hung up. It was a life raft in a sea of shock and betrayal. I stood there, staring at the Berlin skyline, but all I could see was my grandmother's apartment, the place that was supposed to be my anchor, my home, and my brother's smiling face. Before I could explain what that single sentence truly meant, and the absolute chaos it would unleash, I have to take you back. You have to understand the board on which this twisted game was played. The flight from Berlin to Florida is long. 13 hours in a pressurized cabin, suspended between two worlds. My world, the one I had built for myself, and their world, the one I had run away from. I didn't sleep. I just stared out the tiny window at the endless expanse of clouds below, and I let the memories come. They didn't start with the anger. They started with her, Grandma Eleanor. Her apartment wasn't just a property. It was a sanctuary. It was on the 12th floor of an old but beautifully maintained building overlooking the bay. I could still smell it if I closed my eyes. The faint scent of lemon polish, salt from the sea breeze, and the warm, comforting aroma of the shortbread cookies she always had waiting in a tin on the counter. While my parents' house was a museum of perfection, all beige carpets and fragile decor where I was afraid to breathe too loudly, Grandma's place was alive. Her walls were covered in bookshelves groaning under the weight of novels and art history tomes. Sunlight streamed in through the big balcony doors, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air like tiny fairies. She was the one who saw me, really saw me. My father, a stoic accountant, saw my passion for drawing and architecture as a hobby. My mother, obsessed with status, saw it as a less respectable career path than my brother Leo's foray into real estate. An architect? She'd say, her nose wrinkling slightly. It sounds so unstable. Why can't you be more like Leo? He's a natural-born salesman. But Grandma Eleanor saw it differently. When I was 10, she bought me my first professional drafting set. Not a toy. The real thing, with intimidating metal rulers and compasses that felt like surgical tools in my small hands. We would sit at her big oak dining table for hours. She'd be reading, and I'd be drawing skyscrapers that touched the clouds, fantastical bridges, dream houses. She never just praised the drawings. She'd study them, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Tell me about this load-bearing wall, Noah," she'd ask seriously. "How are you supporting this cantilevered balcony?" She made me feel like a creator, a builder of worlds. I remember one afternoon, I must have been 16. I was complaining about a fight with my mom. She wanted me to quit the school art club to focus on my math grades, so I could get into a proper business school, just like Leo. I was angry and hurt, feeling like they were trying to sand down all my edges to fit me into a box I was never meant for. Grandma was watering her orchids on the balcony. She didn't turn around, just kept misting the delicate petals. "Your parents love you, Noah," she said softly, "but they see the world through a lens of fear. They're afraid you'll fail, so they want you to take the safest path." She finally turned to face me, her eyes, the same shade of blue as the deep ocean, locking onto mine. "But you are not built for the safe path. You have a fire in you. I see it." She came over and cupped my face in her hands, her skin soft and papery. "Listen to me," she said, her voice fierce. "Don't ever let them make you a smaller version of yourself. Noah. Not them. Not anyone. Your life is your design. Build it tall. Build it strong. And build it exactly the way you see it." That was her gift to me. Not the condo, not the inheritance, but permission. Permission to be myself. The condo was just the physical manifestation of that belief. It was her telling me, even after she was gone, that I had a place in the world, a foundation to build from, a home to return to if my own designs ever came crashing down. And my brother had taken a sledgehammer to it. The memories of Grandma's apartment were warm, a comforting blanket. But as the plane droned on, they started to curdle, replaced by colder, sharper images. The family dinners, the holidays, the endless, suffocating comparisons to Leo. Leo was 2 years older, and from the moment he was born, he was the sun around which our family's universe revolved. He was handsome, charming, athletic. He got straight A's without seeming to try, was the captain of the football team, and could talk his way into or out of anything. He was everything I wasn't. I was quiet, introspective, more comfortable with a sketchbook than a football. Our parents, Carol and Richard, didn't just prefer Leo. They celebrated him, often at my expense. It wasn't always malicious. Most of the time it was casual, thoughtless, which somehow made it worse. I remember Leo's high school graduation. My parents bought him a brand new convertible. A shiny, cherry-red boat of a car that he paraded around town. The party they threw was legendary. Half the town was there. 2 years later, when I graduated with honors and a scholarship to one of the best architecture schools in the country, I got a sensible sedan, a hand-me-down from my uncle, and a firm handshake from my dad. "Make us proud," he'd said, which was code for, "Try to keep up with your brother." Dinner conversations were the worst. They were a performance, and Leo was always the star. "Leo closed on the old Henderson property today," my dad would announce, beaming. "Made a 20% commission. The kid's a shark." "Oh, that's wonderful, honey," my mom would gush. "We're so proud of you. That promotion to senior agent is right around the corner." Then all eyes would turn to me. "And you, Noah? How's drawing?" It was the drawing. Not architecture. Not design. It was a hobby, a childish pastime. If I tried to explain a project I was passionate about, their eyes would glaze over. Then my Aunt Patricia, my mom's sister, would chime in. She was the queen of the backhanded compliment. "Oh, it's so nice that you have your little passion, Noah," she'd say, patting my hand. It's important to have a creative outlet. Leo is all business, you know. He doesn't have time for hobbies. He's too busy building a future. Every word was a small cut. Every comparison was another brick in the wall they built between me and them. Leo, for his part, played the role of the magnanimous older brother. He'd sling an arm around my shoulder. "Leave him alone, guys. He's the artist. We can't all be good with numbers." He'd say it with a wink, as if he were defending me, but we both knew what he was doing. He was cementing his status as the practical, successful one, and mine as the dreamy, unreliable one. That was their narrative, and they stuck to it for 30 years. Leo was the success. Noah was the project. Leo was the safe bet. Noah was the risk. It was no wonder, then, that I ran. I moved to Berlin the first chance I got. It wasn't just about a job opportunity. It was about breathing. It was about escaping the shadow of the golden boy and the weight of my family's disappointment. I thought thousands of miles would be enough. I was wrong. The last time I saw Grandma Eleanor in person was the Christmas before she passed. She was more fragile than I'd ever seen her, but her spirit was as sharp as ever. She made me promise to email her every week with updates on my projects in Berlin, and she held my hand for a long time when I left, as if she knew it would be the last time. Our final conversation was a video call just a few days before the end. Her voice was weak, a faint whisper, but her eyes were clear. She was in her favorite armchair, the one by the balcony doors, the afternoon sun creating a halo around her silver hair. "Noah," she'd whispered, her face pixelated on my laptop screen. "I need you to listen." I leaned closer, my heart aching. "I'm here, Grandma. I'm listening." "The apartment," she said, each word an effort. "It's for you. I've made it ironclad. It's your foundation, a place you can always come back to, no matter what." She took a shaky breath. "Don't let them bully you out of it. It's yours." "I won't, Grandma." I promised, my throat tight. "I won't." She passed away 2 days later. I flew back for the funeral. The whole thing was a blur of black suits, sympathetic murmurs, and the suffocating scent of lilies. My parents were distraught, but in a performative way. Leo, however, was a rock. He handled everything. He arranged the service, wrote the eulogy, greeted every guest. He was the perfect, responsible son in a time of crisis. Everyone said so. "Thank God for Leo," Aunt Patricia whispered to me at the wake. "I don't know what your mother would do without him. He's taken care of everything." He certainly had. The day after the funeral, there was a family meeting at my parents' house. It wasn't a meeting. It was a coronation. "Okay," Leo started, pulling out a briefcase. He was already in business mode. "There's a lot of paperwork to sort through with Grandma's estate. As I'm here and I'm in real estate, it just makes the most sense for me to be the executor. It'll be faster, cleaner." He looked at me. "Noah, you're all the way in Germany. It would be a nightmare for you to handle this from overseas. I'll take care of it all, and once everything is settled, I'll make sure you get what's yours." My mother nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, that makes perfect sense. Leo knows what he's doing." My father grunted in agreement. "Let Leo handle it. I should have fought it." That little voice in my head, the one that sounded a lot like Grandma, was screaming at me. But I was grieving. I was exhausted, and I was outnumbered. Arguing would have caused a massive fight, and I would have been painted as the difficult, ungrateful son causing drama after a funeral. So I just nodded. "Okay, Leo, if you think it's best." His smile was triumphant. "Great. It's settled then." I flew back to Berlin a few days later, naively believing that my brother, for all his flaws, would honor our grandmother's final wish. I trusted him. That was my first mistake. The truth is, the moment I agreed to let him be the executor, the ink was already drying on his plan. He wasn't just settling an estate. He was orchestrating a heist, and I had just handed him the keys. The taxi from the airport dropped me off at my parents' pristine suburban house. The lawn was perfectly manicured, the flowers in the garden bed arranged by color. It was a house that screamed order and control, a place where messy emotions were swept under the rug. I took a deep breath and walked up to the front door, my heart pounding a nervous rhythm against my ribs. My mother, Carol, opened the door before I could ring the bell. Her face, usually composed, was tight with a mixture of surprise and annoyance. "Noah, what are you doing here? You didn't say you were coming." There was no hug. "No, it's so good to see you. I needed to come back, Mom. We need to talk about Grandma's condo." She stiffened, her eyes darting past me as if checking for spies. "Oh, for heaven's sake, come in. Don't make a scene on the front porch." I stepped into the cool, silent foyer. My father, Richard, emerged from his study holding a newspaper. He just looked at me over the top of his reading glasses, his expression unreadable. "What's this about the condo?" my mother demanded, closing the door behind me. Her voice was a sharp, accusatory whisper. "Mr. Harrison called me," I said, keeping my voice as level as I could. "He said it's been sold. He said Leo sold it." My mother waved a dismissive hand. "Well, yes, he got a fantastic offer, Noah. Way above market value. You should be thanking him." I stared at her, dumbfounded. The sheer audacity of it left me speechless for a moment. Thanking him? Mom, it was my inheritance. Grandma left it to me. We all knew that. "Don't be so dramatic," she snapped. "Your grandmother was an old woman. She wasn't thinking clearly. Leo did what was best for the family. He's putting that money to good use, investing it. He even said he'd set aside a little something for you." "A little something?" I could feel the control over my voice starting to slip. "It wasn't his to sell. It was mine. He stole it from me. Don't you dare use that word in this house," she hissed, her face flushed with anger. "Your brother has done nothing but look out for this family. He's the one who stayed here, who took care of things, who built a successful life. While you were off in Europe playing with your little drawings. It was always this, the same old song. Every argument, every disagreement came back to this. Leo the saint, Noah the sinner." I looked at my father, pleading with my eyes. "Dad, you can't think this is okay." He folded his newspaper with meticulous precision, setting it down on the hall table. He wouldn't meet my gaze. "Your mother is right, Noah," he said, his voice flat. "Leo handles the family's finances. He knows what he's doing. You should just let it go. Let it go." 2 words. 2 simple words that told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't just up against my brother. I was up against them all. A united front of denial and delusion. There was no reasoning with them. No appeal to be made. I was utterly, completely alone. "No," I said, the word coming out quiet but feeling as heavy as stone. "I'm not going to let it go." I turned and walked out the door, leaving them standing there in their perfect, silent hallway. The storm had just begun, and I was walking right into the heart of it. The next morning, I was sitting in Arthur Harrison's office. It was the complete opposite of my parents' house. It was a place of comfortable chaos. Books stacked on every surface, framed degrees hanging slightly crooked on the wood-paneled walls. It smelled of old paper and coffee. Mr. Harrison sat behind a massive mahogany desk, looking at me over a pair of half-moon spectacles. He exuded a calm authority that was immensely reassuring. "Your parents' reaction is unfortunate, but not unexpected," he said, steepling his fingers. "In these situations, families often close ranks to protect the one they perceive as the most successful." "He thinks he got away with it," I said, the bitterness sharp in my throat. "They all do." "Well," Mr. Harrison said, a wry smile touching his lips, "let's see about that." He slid a file across the desk towards me. "This is a certified copy of the deed of sale I had messengered over this morning. Now, I want you to look at 2 things. He pointed to a spot at the bottom of the page. "First, the notary public. Her name is Brenda Schaefer. A quick search in the state database shows that Ms. Schaefer retired 2 years ago. Her commission expired 26 months ago, to be exact. It's illegal to notarize a document with an expired commission." A jolt went through me. Hope. It was a small thing, but it was real. "So the sale is invalid?" Not necessarily on its own. It's a serious irregularity, a big red flag for a judge, but the real key is the signature. He pushed another set of documents towards me, old tax returns and a previous will, all bearing my grandmother's signature. You also brought the birthday cards she sent you. I pulled them from my satchel. 3 cards, one from each year I'd been in Berlin. On the desk, we laid them out. The official, practice signatures on the legal documents, the more personal, slightly shaky signatures on the cards, and then the one on the deed of sale. At first glance, the forgery was good. Very good. Leo must have practiced for hours. The loops, the slant, the pressure, it was almost perfect. But almost isn't perfect. Look here, Mr. Harrison said, tapping the E in Eleanor. Your grandmother always made the top loop of her E slightly larger than the bottom one, like a little hat. It's there in every single one of these authentic examples. He then pointed to the forged signature. Here, the loops are almost identical. It's a textbook sign of a forger. They're concentrating so hard on mimicking the overall shape that they miss the natural, ingrained habits of the writer. He pointed to another spot, and the N at the end of her name. She always finished with a sharp, upward flick. See it? But on the deed, the stroke just stops. It's hesitant. We spent the next hour poring over the documents, and with every tick of the grandfather clock in the corner, the case against Leo grew stronger. It was more than just a feeling now. It was evidence. Cold, hard facts on paper. It was the first crack in the wall of my family's lies. This is good, Mr. Harrison said, leaning back in his chair. This is very good. We'll need to hire a forensic handwriting expert to make it official, but I'm confident in what they'll find. He looked at me, his eyes serious. This is going to get ugly, Noah. Are you prepared for that? I thought of my grandmother's voice. Don't ever let them make you a smaller version of yourself. I am, I said, my voice steady for the first time in days. Let's do it. I had just gotten back to my hotel room when my phone rang. The caller ID flashed a name I hadn't seen in months. Leo. A bitter laugh escaped me. The timing was almost comical. I let it ring twice, took a deep, steadying breath, and answered. Hey, little brother. His voice was exactly as I remembered it. Booming, overly confident, dripping with the smug satisfaction of someone who believed he was the smartest person in any room. Heard you were back in town. You should have told me. We could have gotten a beer. I've been busy, Leo, I said, my voice flat. Yeah, I'll bet. I could almost hear the smirk in his voice. Listen, the reason I'm calling, I know Mom probably told you about Grandma's condo. I just wanted to clear the air. I got a cash offer way over asking. I had to jump on it. It was the smart financial move for the estate. He was using his real estate agent voice. Smooth, reasonable, making it all sound like a favor. It wasn't the estate's condo to sell, Leo. It was mine. He sighed, a theatrical sound of long-suffering patience. Look, Noah, I know what the will said, but Grandma wasn't well at the end. She was sentimental. She didn't understand the market or the tax implications. I did what was best for everyone. And hey, don't worry, I'm not leaving you out. Once the funds clear, I'm going to send you a check for $20,000. You can use it to, buy some new pencils or whatever it is you do over there in Germany. $20,000. He had sold my inheritance, a property worth well over $250,000, and was offering me a pittance, a tip, like a generous king tossing a coin to a peasant. The insult was so profound it was almost breathtaking. For a moment, pure, white-hot rage surged through me. I wanted to scream at him, to curse him, to tell him what a pathetic, greedy thief he was. But then, I remembered Mr. Harrison's calm face, the evidence, the shaky E, and the dead-end N, and I felt a sudden, icy calm descend over me. I had him. He just didn't know it yet. That's generous of you, Leo, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Hey, what are brothers for? He said, chuckling, completely oblivious. I just wanted to make sure we were cool. Oh, we're cool, I said. Just one question for you. Shoot. I paused, letting the silence stretch. It's funny, I said. making my voice sound casual, curious. I was just looking at the birthday card Grandma sent me last year. The way she signed her name. It's not quite the same as the signature on the deed of sale. Her E is different. Isn't that strange? The silence on the other end of the line was instantaneous and absolute. The cheerful, booming confidence vanished, replaced by a dead, heavy quiet. I could hear his breathing, suddenly shallow. What are you talking about? He finally stammered, his voice a full octave higher. Just an observation, I said smoothly. You have a good day now, brother. I hung up the phone before he could reply. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. The first shot had been fired, and I had hit my target dead center. The golden boy was scared, and this was only the beginning. The phone call with Leo galvanized me. The fight was no longer just a legal battle. It was personal. He had shown his hand, his complete and utter disrespect for me and for our grandmother's memory. Now, it was my turn to build a case he couldn't wriggle out of. Mr. Harrison had advised me to gather as much supporting evidence as I could. Anything that could establish my grandmother's state of mind and her intentions. My first stop was the condo building itself. I paid a visit to Mrs. Gable, who lived in the apartment next to my grandmother's for over 40 years. She was a tiny woman with bright, bird-like eyes and a memory as sharp as a tack. I found her tending to her rose bushes in the communal garden. "Noah, dear, I thought that was you I saw the other day," she said, pulling off her gardening gloves. "I was so sorry to hear about Eleanor. She was the heart of this building." After we talked for a bit about Grandma, I gently steered the conversation. "Mrs. Gable, I know this might be an odd question, but do you remember seeing my brother, Leo, at the apartment any time after the funeral?" Her eyes narrowed in thought. "Yes, of course. He was here the very next day. Cleared the place out so fast, it made my head spin." She paused, tapping a finger to her lip. "You know, it was funny. He was with another man. Not one of the movers. A man in a cheap suit carrying a briefcase. They were in and out in less than an hour. I remember thinking it was strange because Eleanor always used Mr. Abernathy from down the street for any official business. He's the notary everyone here uses." My pulse quickened. "Did you get a look at this other man?" "Not a good one, dear. But he looked nervous. Kept looking over his shoulder. It wasn't a smoking gun, but it was another piece of the puzzle. A strange man, a cheap suit, a nervous demeanor. It all painted a picture of a transaction that was happening in the shadows." My next call was to Dr. Miller, my grandmother's physician and one of her oldest friends. I explained the situation, and he was immediately incensed on my behalf. "That's an outrage," he boomed over the phone. "Your grandmother spoke of you constantly, Noah. She was so proud of you, chasing your dreams in Europe. She told me no less than a dozen times that the condo was your safety net. She was worried your parents were putting too much pressure on you to be like your brother. She wanted to make sure you had your own foundation, something nobody could take away from you. Would you be willing to testify to that, Dr. Miller? If it comes to it." "In a heartbeat, son," he said without hesitation. "Eleanor was as sharp as a tack until the very end. Anyone who says otherwise is a damn liar." I hung up the phone with a renewed sense of purpose. I wasn't just fighting for a piece of property anymore. I was fighting for the truth of who my grandmother was. I had a witness who saw Leo's suspicious meeting and a respected doctor who could attest to Grandma's clear intentions. My little folder of evidence, the one I had labeled truth, was getting thicker. The eye of the storm was calm, but I was busy sharpening my weapons for the hurricane I knew was coming. With the witness statements and the glaring irregularities on the deed, Mr. Harrison said we had enough to make our first move. It wasn't going to be a dramatic courtroom showdown, not yet. It was something quieter, colder, and far more effective. "We're going to file for an emergency injunction," he explained, his voice calm and methodical over the phone. "We'll present the evidence of potential fraud to a judge, the expired notary, the questionable signature, the witness testimony. We'll ask the court to freeze the proceeds from the sale until this matter can be properly investigated." "Freeze the money?" I asked, a slow smile spreading across my face. "That's right. Mr. Harrison confirmed. Your brother won't be able to touch a single penny of it. It will be locked down in an escrow account by court order. For a man who just sold a property for a significant sum, and who likely already has plans for that money, this will be disruptive. Disruptive was the understatement of the year. I knew Leo. His entire identity was built on the image of success. The new car, the expensive suits, the perfect family in the perfect house in the perfect neighborhood. That image required a constant flow of cash. His wife, Chloe, was just as invested in that lifestyle, if not more so. Cutting off their access to a windfall of over $300,000 would be like cutting off their oxygen. The process itself was surprisingly swift and impersonal. Mr. Harrison drafted the motion, attached our preliminary evidence, and filed it with the county court. There was no hearing, no shouting match. Just the silent, grinding gears of the legal system turning in our favor. 2 days later, Mr. Harrison called me. The judge granted the injunction. Noah, it's done. The order was just served to your brother's bank. I imagined the moment. Leo, probably out at a client lunch, trying to pay with his debit card and having it declined. The confusion, the annoyance, then the dawning horror as he checked his account online and saw a balance of 0, with a note referencing a court order. The frantic call to his bank. The cold, impersonal explanation from a bank employee. It was a declaration of war, delivered not with a shout, but with the quiet, devastating finality of a legal document. We had seized the disputed territory. Now we just had to wait for the enemy's panicked response. I didn't have to wait long. The silence from my family, which had been deafening for the past week, was about to be shattered completely. The real storm was finally about to break. The call came from an unknown number. When I answered, all I heard was frantic, hysterical sobbing. Noah? Oh my God, Noah, you have to help me. Took me a second to place the voice. It was Chloe, Leo's wife. Chloe? What's wrong? I asked, though I had a very good idea. It's the money, Noah. It's all gone. The bank account is frozen. We can't pay the mortgage on the new house. We have a balloon payment due next week on the construction loan. We're going to lose everything. Her voice was a raw shriek of panic. This was the life they had built. A house of cards financed by future commissions and anticipated windfalls. I had just pulled out the bottom card. That money is frozen because it's stolen property, Chloe, I said, my voice hard. There was no room for sympathy. I didn't know, she wailed. I mean, I knew he was selling it, but he said it was all legal. He said Grandma was confused and he was just fixing her mistake. He promised me everything was fine. She was trying to distance herself to play the victim. But I wasn't buying it. Did you really believe that, Chloe? Or did you just not want to ask too many questions because you had already picked out the new furniture? Her sobbing hitched. She knew I was right. What are we going to do? She whispered, her voice cracking. He's losing his mind, Noah. He's been on the phone with his lawyer all day. They're talking about countersuits, about declaring you incompetent. He's saying terrible things. Let him, I said calmly. He's just digging his hole deeper. There was a long pause, filled only by her ragged breathing. She was cornered, and a cornered animal will do anything to escape. What do you want? She asked, her voice barely audible. The truth, Chloe. I want the truth. If I help you, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You have to promise you won't come after me. I have the kids to think of. Their college fund. Everything is tied up in this. I'm not interested in you, Chloe. I'm interested in justice for my grandmother. Help me, and you'll have nothing to fear from me. Another pause. I could hear her making the calculation, weighing her loyalty to her husband against the stark reality of financial ruin. Self-preservation won. Meet me in an hour, she said, naming a coffee shop on the other side of town. And Noah, don't tell Leo. He would kill me. An hour later, I was sitting in a corner booth, watching a visibly terrified Chloe slide a manila envelope across the table towards me. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely let go of it. What is this? I asked. It's from his desk drawer. she whispered, not meeting my eyes. He thought he'd thrown them all out, but he missed one. He's so arrogant. He never thought anyone would look. I opened the clasp and pulled out the contents. My breath caught in my throat. It was a single sheet of paper from a yellow legal pad. But it wasn't a legal document. It was covered, from top to bottom, in my grandmother's name. Eleanor Vance. Eleanor Vance. Eleanor Vance. Dozens of times. Some were close to her real signature. Others were shaky and distorted. It was a practice sheet. The undeniable, damning proof of his crime. He hadn't just signed her name once. He had learned it. He had rehearsed the theft. I looked up at Chloe. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. She wasn't an ally. She was a coward who had chosen the winning side. But it didn't matter. She had just handed me the weapon that would end this war. The meeting was held at Mr. Harrison's office. Felt like the final scene of a play. The air in the conference room was thick with tension. On one side of the long, polished mahogany table sat Leo and his slick, expensive-looking lawyer. My parents were there too, sitting slightly behind Leo, a silent, grim-faced support system. On the other side, there was just me and Mr. Harrison. Leo's lawyer started, his voice smooth and condescending. Mr. Harrison, we're here today to resolve this unfortunate family misunderstanding. My client, Mr. Vance, acted in good faith as the executor of his grandmother's estate. This injunction is a frivolous and malicious action, and we are prepared to file a countersuit for damages to my client's reputation and financial standing. Leo sat there, nodding along, a smug, confident look on his face. He'd clearly regained his composure. He believed this was a negotiation. He believed he could bully his way out of this. Mr. Harrison listened patiently until he was finished. Then he leaned forward, placing his hands flat on the table. "A misunderstanding?" he said, his voice quiet but carrying an immense weight. "Let's talk about the misunderstandings." He slid a copy of the deed across the table. Was it a misunderstanding that the notary's commission had been expired for over 2 years? Leo's lawyer started to speak, but Mr. Harrison held up a hand. Was it a misunderstanding when your client's neighbor, Mrs. Gable, witnessed him entering the apartment with an unknown man in a cheap suit the day after the funeral? Leo's confident smirk began to waver. My mother shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "And what about the signature itself?" Mr. Harrison continued, his voice picking up speed. "We hired a leading forensic document examiner, Dr. Anya Sharma. Her report concludes, with 99.9% certainty, that the signature of Eleanor Vance on this document is a forgery." He dropped a thick, bound report on the table. The word forgery was visible even from across the room. Leo's face had gone pale. "This is ridiculous. It's her signature. The expert is wrong," he blustered. "Is she?" Mr. Harrison said softly. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of yellow paper, sealed in a plastic evidence bag. He placed it gently in the center of the table. It was the practice sheet. The room fell completely silent. I watched as the color drained from Leo's face. His eyes were wide with sheer, primal panic. He looked at my parents, but they just stared at the sheet of paper, their faces a mask of horror and disbelief. My mother's hand went to her mouth. Leo's mask of perfection shattered into a million pieces. The golden boy was gone. In his place was just a common thief caught red-handed. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His lawyer looked at the sheet, then at his client, and a look of profound disgust crossed his face. He knew. It was over, and in that moment of absolute, crushing silence, I decided to deliver the final blow, the one they never saw coming. "You know," I said, my voice cutting through the tension, "the condo was never the most important thing she left me." All eyes turned to me. "Mr. Harrison," I said, keeping my gaze locked on my brother. "Perhaps now would be a good time to inform them about the Eleanor Vance Trust Fund." Mr. Harrison allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. "Of course." He cleared his throat. "It seems that in her final years, Eleanor, with the help of her financial advisor, quietly consolidated the majority of her liquid assets, stocks, bonds, investment properties, into a private trust. She did this to protect it. The sole beneficiary of this trust, which is valued at just over $2 million, is Noah. If the practice sheet had been a gut punch, this was a cannonball. My mother let out an audible gasp. My father looked like he'd been turned to stone. And Leo looked like he was going to be physically sick. The blood drained from his face, leaving a pasty, gray mask. He had gone to war over a small plot of land, completely unaware that I had just inherited the entire country. The irony was so thick, so perfect, it was almost beautiful. He hadn't just been a thief. He'd been a fool. This is the moment that changed everything, the moment I finally took back control of my own life. Thank you for staying with me to this point. You are amazing. Please help me by liking this video and commenting the number 1 below, so I know you've been on this journey with me. This not only helps more people find the story, but also lets me know that my experiences mean something to someone else. Your support is the greatest motivation for me to continue sharing the rest of my journey. The air in the room had changed. The power had shifted so completely, so seismically, that it was a physical presence. Leo's lawyer, a man who had walked in full of bluster and threats, now looked at his client with utter contempt. My parents were staring into the middle distance, their minds clearly reeling from the revelation of the trust fund. They weren't just processing Leo's crime. They were processing their own catastrophic misjudgment. Leo was broken. He was slumped in his chair, staring at the damning yellow sheet of paper. The golden boy had melted. His lawyer cleared his throat. Given this new information, he stammered, my client is prepared to discuss a settlement. There will be no settlement, I said, my voice ringing with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. There will only be terms. My terms. Mr. Harrison nodded at me to continue. First, I began, the sale of the condo will be voided. Leo will use his own money, not the estate's, not his frozen account, to return the full purchase price, plus damages and inconvenience fees, to the Henderson family who bought it in good faith. They are innocent victims in this, and they will be made whole by him. Leo flinched but didn't speak. Second, he will pay for all legal fees. Mine, his, and the Hendersons. He will also pay the full fee for Dr. Sharma's expert analysis. I paused, letting the financial weight of his actions sink in. But the money was the easy part. Third, I said, looking directly at him, you will write a full, unreserved letter of apology. It will be notarized by a real notary this time. In it, you will admit to forging our grandmother's signature and attempting to defraud me of my inheritance. A copy of that letter will be given to me, to Mr. Harrison, and to every member of our extended family. A low gasp came from my mother. This wasn't just about punishment. It was about destroying the myth of his perfection. And finally, I said, turning my gaze to my parents, you will write a separate letter addressed to our parents. In that letter, you will explain not only what you did, but why you felt you could get away with it. You will admit that you took their constant praise and my constant dismissal as a green light. You will tell them that their favoritism created a monster. And you will give that letter to them, and I will get a copy. This was the hardest blow. It wasn't just about Leo's crime anymore. It was about the family system that created him. It was forcing a reckoning that was 30 years overdue. If you agree to these terms, I will instruct Mr. Harrison not to turn over the evidence to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. I concluded. You have 24 hours to decide. The offer will not be repeated. There was no negotiation. There was no discussion. I stood up. Mr. Harrison stood up. We walked out of the conference room, leaving them to sit in the rubble of the life they had built on a foundation of lies. They accepted the terms. Of course they did. The threat of criminal charges, of a public trial, of jail time. It was more than Leo's fragile ego or my parents' obsession with appearances could ever bear. A few days later, after the legal documents had been signed and the process of righting Leo's wrongs had begun, I went to my parents' house one last time. I needed to close this chapter. I found them in the living room. The TV was off. They were just sitting there, in the dim light, surrounded by their perfect furniture and their perfect silence. They looked older, smaller. My mother was the first to speak. Her voice was brittle. "We got Leo's letter." I didn't say anything. I just waited. We never meant for it to go this far," she said, her words barely a whisper. "We just always thought. He was so capable. And you were so far away." It wasn't an apology. Not really. It was an excuse. An explanation rooted in the same flawed logic that had caused all this pain. "You didn't think I was capable," I said, not as an accusation, but as a statement of fact. "You thought I'd waste it. You thought I was a bad investment. That's the truth, isn't it?" My father, who had been silent this whole time, finally looked at me. There was a profound sadness in his eyes, a flicker of something that might have been regret. "We made a mistake, Noah," he said, his voice hoarse. "We were wrong." It was the closest I would ever get to a real apology from him, and I knew it. I stood there for a moment, looking at these two people who were my parents but felt like strangers. I didn't feel anger anymore, just a deep, hollow sadness for what we had lost, for what we could have been. "I'm going to be staying in the States for a while," I said. "I'm starting a business, but I need space. From all of this. From you." I set a boundary for the first time in my life. A wall they couldn't cross. "I don't know when I'll be ready to talk again. It might be a long time. You need to respect that." My mother started to cry, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. My father just gave a single, slow nod. I turned and left without another word. As I closed the door behind me, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I didn't even realize I had been carrying my entire life. I was free, not just financially secure, but truly, fundamentally free from their judgment and their expectations. The confrontation was over. The healing could now begin. 6 months can feel like a lifetime. I didn't go back to Berlin. The life I had there felt like it belonged to someone else, a younger, more uncertain version of myself. The trust fund my grandmother had so wisely set up gave me something I'd never had before. Options. Freedom. I moved to a city a few hours up the coast, a place where the architecture was interesting and nobody knew my name. With a portion of the inheritance, I did something I had only dreamed of. I started my own boutique architecture firm. I rented a small, sunlit office downtown and hired a handful of talented young designers. I named it the Eleanor Design Group. Work became my therapy. I poured all my energy into it, designing homes that were not just beautiful but functional, spaces that felt alive. We got our first big project, a community library, and we won an award for the design. The feeling of seeing my vision come to life, built of steel and glass and stone, was more satisfying than any amount of money. I was finally building my life to my own blueprint, just like she had told me to. I decided to keep the condo. Selling it felt wrong, like selling a part of her. It needed healing just like I did. So, on the weekends, I would drive down and work on it. I tore out the old carpets, refinished the hardwood floors that had been hiding underneath. I painted the walls a warm, bright white. I redesigned the kitchen, opening it up to the living area. The work was hard and physical. Sanding, painting, demolishing. With every layer of old wallpaper I stripped away, it felt like I was stripping away a layer of old pain. With every fresh coat of paint, it felt like a new beginning. I kept her favorite armchair, the one she was sitting in during our last call, and placed it by the balcony doors where it had always been. The rest of the furniture was new, my own style, but that chair was the heart of the home. One afternoon, I was sitting in that chair, drinking a coffee and looking out at the bay. The place was filled with light. It was quiet, peaceful. It no longer felt like a crime scene or a battleground. It felt like home. My home. A foundation. A place to return to. My grandmother had given me a gift far greater than property. She had given me the chance to rebuild myself from the ground up. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. I kept my distance from the family, as promised. The only news I got came in trickles, mostly through Aunt Patricia, who, in the absence of other family drama, had appointed herself the carrier of grim news. Her calls were always filled with a kind of morbid satisfaction. She told me that Leo and Chloe were in the process of a very messy divorce. The financial strain had shattered their already fragile marriage. Chloe had taken the kids and moved in with her parents. Leo, she said, was a wreck. He'd had to sell their big, new house at a massive loss to cover his debts. He lost his job at the real estate firm. The scandal, though not public, had become known in the small, gossipy world of high-end real estate. No one wanted to be represented by a man who had forged his own grandmother's signature. He was selling used cars at a dealership off the highway. The golden boy had lost his shine. I felt nothing when I heard this. No joy, no satisfaction. Just a quiet, detached sadness. His downfall was his own creation. My only role had been to turn on the lights so everyone could see the monster he had become. Then one day, about a year after the confrontation, a small package arrived at my office. There was no return address, but I recognized the spidery, elegant handwriting of my mother. My hand hesitated before opening it. I wasn't sure I was ready for whatever was inside. A desperate plea for reconciliation, a letter full of excuses. But curiosity won out. Inside, nestled in a bed of tissue paper, was a beautiful, antique silver pocket watch. It was my grandfather's. I remembered it from when I was a child. He would let me hold it, feel its weight, listen to its steady, rhythmic ticking. It was a family heirloom, the kind of thing passed down from father to son. My mother had always said, in front of everyone, that it would one day belong to Leo. There was a small, folded note tucked beside it. It wasn't a long letter. It was just 5 words, written in my mother's hand. Your grandmother was right. I sank down into my office chair, holding the cool, heavy weight of the watch in my palm. This was it. This was the apology my mother could never speak aloud. It was a concession, a transfer of legacy. It was an admission that they had bet on the wrong son. I didn't know if our relationship could ever be truly repaired. The wounds were too deep, the years of neglect too vast. But for the first time, a tiny sliver of hope appeared. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of a new foundation, one built not on lies and favoritism, but on a difficult, painful, and long overdue truth. The ticking of the watch in my hand sounded like a heart, slowly starting to beat again. Today, I'm standing on the balcony of my grandmother's condo, my condo. The sea breeze is cool and salty, and the sun is setting over the bay, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The city lights are just beginning to twinkle to life below. It's beautiful. The renovation is finished. The space is filled with my own art, my own books, and the quiet hum of a life I've built with my own 2 hands. The Eleanor Design Group is thriving. We're taking on bigger projects, and I feel that spark of passion every single morning, the one my grandmother always saw in me. I don't hate my brother anymore. I mostly feel a kind of pity for him. He spent his whole life chasing a version of success that my parents defined for him, and it left him hollow. I hope, someday, he finds a way to build a life based on something real, something honest. My relationship with my parents is quiet. We speak on holidays, short and somewhat formal calls. The pocket watch sits on my desk, a constant reminder of their silent admission. Maybe one day there will be more, but for now, the honesty of distance is better than the dishonesty of forced closeness. I realize now that the struggle was never really about the condo or even the money. It was about my own value. My whole life, I had allowed my family's narrative to define me. The dreamer, the second best, the one who wasn't quite good enough. But my grandmother knew better. She left me a home and a fortune, yes, but those were just tools. Her real inheritance, the one that truly changed my life, was the unwavering belief that I was enough, just as I was. The fight to reclaim what was mine was really a fight to reclaim myself. It was a journey to finally, fully, believe what she had believed all along. My life is my design, and I've built it strong. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. It's a reminder that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones that lead to the most beautiful destinations. Have you ever had to fight for something that was rightfully yours? Something that went deeper than just money or possessions? Share your story in the comments below. I read every one. And please, Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Your support means the